And let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and call to order. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us bow in prayer. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for the night of rest. Thank you for this beautiful day in Washington County. Lord, may we honor and please you in the things we do and say. May we serve the citizens of this great community with vigor, integrity, and honesty. Lord, have mercy upon us, lead, guide, and direct us. I pray in thy name. Amen. Amen. This time I'll go ahead and officially call our meeting to order. And with that, first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of our December 13th, 2022 last year meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the December 13th meeting as presented. No alterations or changes. Any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, opposed, same sign. Thank you, gentlemen, 5-0. At this point, we'll move into commissioners' reports and comments, and I'm going to do a flip-flop. And Mr. Wagner, you want to go first?
Sure. Good morning. Glad to be back. Welcome everybody back. Starting a new year. Other than just being away on our break, I did get to a double Eagle Scout ceremony on Saturday, which was Xander Hine and Gabe Casessa. It's always really great to see
Oops, I'm sorry.
two more young men become Eagles. Nice ceremony, and I congratulate both of them, their families, and all the supporters they had. I think that's it.
Mr. Klein?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. It's good to be back. Just a couple highlights. I, too, attended that double Eagle Scout ceremony. It's always great to be around that group of people that are supplying guidance to our youth. I also was a spectator at the Polar Bear Plunge sponsored by the Humane Society of Washington County. For all who want to know, I'm a retired plunger now, so don't ask me to do it again. But they had a large turnout. It was great to see that one of their major fundraising efforts for the year was very successful. And Polly Ward, thank you for being there as well. I believe you're on the board for the Humane Society. And one of the things this past New Year's, Hagerstown had its 10-year anniversary of the donut drop, and I've been to about every one of them, I believe. Despite the rain and downpour, you still saw community, you saw parents with kids, you saw dads having kids on their shoulders watching. So I believe that has been a good event, to the addition of things for downtown, amongst many other things, but that is the highlight, so that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Mr. Harvey?
Good morning. Couple of things I'd like to comment on. Over the past weekend, I had the opportunity to pass out awards at North High School for a wrestling meet, and they had about 8 schools there, and Mayor Keller and school board member April Zentmeyer and the school superintendent also participated, and that was good to see everyone there and all the good athletes that we have here in the county. And then yesterday morning I visited Pangbourne Elementary School to take a look at some of the programs there, and visited with the principal and especially the first grade classes, and looked at the infrastructure there. And this Thursday I'm going to be visiting North and South High Schools to get a tour and briefings on the issues, challenges with infrastructure and capacity and those types of things at North and South High School. I want to make a longer comment, though, about over the holiday weekend we had a severe cold spell, and there was some news generated about that because of some Facebook posts by municipal officials and fire department officials talking about this crisis and asking, what is the plan, what are we going to do, and where's the county? And then the following week, the Herald wrote an article about the cold weather response panned and saying the response was unacceptable. I like to go out and see what's actually going on, and I spent that whole weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, visiting shelters, visiting homeless camps along the railroads, went to Engine House, Western Enterprise Engine House four times over the weekend to see what the utilization was at that warming center. And at the time, only one person, as of late Sunday, had gone in there, and it wasn't for cold weather reasons. The conclusion that I came to, and from talking to people at Hope Center and other locations that were involved, be it volunteers, people that worked there, or the homeless themselves, is that the system worked well. There was no cold weather crisis. The county and the city did extremely well. And they did well because we have citizens here that care at the church and individual level who contribute to helping people, and they're volunteers. It worked well because we've got good county and city staff that do their jobs, and it worked well because we support homeless assistance through a lot of foundations and contributions at multiple levels, so it's not just the county. And they support the Hope Center and REACH and others that are helping with this disadvantaged community. And unfortunately, this disadvantaged community, too many of them do not want to use the services that are available. I'm not going to go into those larger issues, but what I'd like to say is there's a process in place. We have systems, we have capabilities, and they worked well, and our citizens should not be concerned about that. People stepped up to make sure that in the case that someone did need some assistance, it was available. So Smithsburg opened up their engine house, no one used it. Debbie Cohill and the Interfaith Council with the Martha's House made it available, and we had 3 families that came in because they lost power, not because they're homeless. And they didn't have to stay at Martha's House, but they were taken care of, and they got appropriate shelter, and they were well taken care of. People in this community care and do what's right to take care of their fellow citizens. So I want to set that aside. Now, this Thursday, we're going to have a meeting with city officials from Hagerstown to go over what the proper procedures are, systems, and how you actually request assistance and communicate if you think you need help. If we were to get a formal request, and we never got a formal request from the city, and we never got a formal request or an informal request from any of the shelters. But we're going to go over this to make sure that people understand what their own responsibilities are at the city, what their resources are, and how they interact with us. And if we got a formal request, we would validate it, John. We would determine how we would correctly respond, and we would make sure that we did respond. So with that, I'll just leave it. But I was a little upset that this went to Facebook before there was any real assessment about what was really the challenge.
Derek, may I add something? Also want to recognize that Tom Brown several months ago, per request of Hancock and Debbie Cohill, started working with them to organize a warming and cooling shelter and all the things that they need to be accepted as well. Is that correct on that? So there's another example how we've been helping the municipalities. Thank you.
Yeah. I also want to commend you. You spent your Christmas weekend. I know how hard you worked. You ran around and visited all the shelters, and hats off to you and your son and doing all that, particularly with the Christmas holidays, and greatly appreciated. And we are a good community and well-staffed, well-versed, and there's many venues in this community that jump to the need and do so on a regular basis. So, again, thank you again for all your efforts. Commissioner Kiefer?
Yeah, well, to start out, thank you, Commissioner Harvey. I think that was surmised perfectly. And over the Christmas holiday. I know you had just reached out to me and shared many of those concerns and your observations personally. Very well said. Thank you. Thank you for taking an interest in that. During the holiday between Christmas and New Year's, I had COVID, so I was in isolation and didn't get to do many of the holiday things or activities in the community that I otherwise wanted to, but thankfully I recovered very quickly and fully. I would say during that time, thanks to the county staff who had been in contact with me while I was off, citizens' questions still came in by phone, by email, and they were taken care of. I know Tom Brown, his name's already been mentioned, but he had reached out to me at one point, and again, a couple of my fellow commissioners, so was still able to get some things done. Would like to comment on, I saw in the newspaper a nice article on the passing of Pete Callis. I knew Dr. Callis. We both served on the Commission on Aging together, and I did not know his complete background, as I read in the newspaper, but some of the quotes that were mentioned, a very likable guy, very caring. Absolutely. Just my experience with him later in life, that was very true, and what little bit I was able to get to know him, very honored to know Dr. Pete Callis, and very sorry and sympathies to his family on his passing. A couple questions. We haven't met in a couple weeks, so some things that have come up I've been reminded about. Back in May, we approved a telework policy to start July 1st with a 90-day update, and I don't think we received an update on that telework policy. So if we could do that, that would be, I think, very helpful. That 90-day, it was to be in October, so we've had a couple extra days, and I suppose that's okay, but I think it would be good if we had an update, and certainly we have a new board, so new opinions can be shared on that.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Commissioner, staff has been working on that. We wanted to wait until the entire time went through, and then looking at how many employees are taking advantage of that, or working through that. So, we'll work with, I've been working with Tom and our HR.
Well, we asked for a 90-day update, so even at 90 days, if the request was a couple extra weeks to see how it worked, I think that would have been helpful. So if we can get an update on that soon, that's important. I've asked a couple times for information on the process and, in my words, the mechanics of how a tax refund may work if we were to use some surplus money. I know as we're going through our budget, we're expecting higher revenues than the year before. As we head into a recession, when I go to the grocery store, I like to joke with the cashier, boy, it was cheaper than the week before. It gets cheaper every week. And of course, I'm being facetious there. It doesn't get cheaper every week. Things do cost more every week. And I realize that makes our expenses a little higher too, but we as government have the luxury of our revenues is based on a percentage. It's not a flat rate. Unfortunately, that's not necessarily true for our taxpayers and their source of income. So I think if it's not the full board's agreement to go down that path, that's fine. But a simple email to me would be helpful, so I know personally how a tax refund would work. It's been done in the past with much less revenues. I'm curious. I want to know. And I would appreciate a follow-up on that. Doesn't have to be right now. I would also like to ask, I've been contacted by many employees. I know no department like our IT department has gone through the frustrations in dealing with the cyber attack. But I feel the commissioners, we haven't been briefed yet, and I think a formal just information session on what's going on. I realize I haven't been given an update unless I've asked about something that's going on. And I think it's helpful for this board. We want to make sure it doesn't happen again, and the oversight for that rests with us. So I think it would be helpful if we had in the appropriate format, whatever that might be, and I know some things can't be shared, but I feel like more information could have been shared with the commissioners. I appreciate in the beginning being notified, but again, I haven't had an update unless I've specifically asked. So if we could get some information at the appropriate time, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say, at the beginning of the process, there were a number of updates that were provided to the commissioners. So, and their updates are less frequent because there's not a lot to share, but I'll be happy to share what we know and give you a latest update on that.
What you're asking maybe for a summary, is that what you're kind of,
Well, I think
what's accumulated to today?
a summary, what knowledge has been gained about it that, would be relevant to us to, again, make sure it doesn't
Working through all
happen.
that Still, I will still say we are still working through a lot of that. But I'd be happy to provide an update to the commissioners in the appropriate setting. I'd be happy to do that.
Okay. That's all I have.
And I get our IT department to assist with that.
And again, I'm very appreciative. I know they were here on a holiday, as was I. Commissioner Klein was here, but certainly didn't put in the time that they have and that you have. But more regular updates, I think, would be important for the board. It's been a while. Okay.
Yes, Commissioner Harvey?
Is it appropriate for me to just make one additional comment?
Absolutely.
Yesterday was Law Enforcement Appreciation Day, and I think that snuck up on a lot of people. But, we as a community are very appreciative of our law enforcement, the safety that they provide, the security that they provide, and the sacrifices that they make to make Washington County a good place to live. And many of them pay the ultimate price. And we do appreciate what they do, and I just don't want to let this day go past without making a comment about that. So thank you very much to our law enforcement community.
Thanks. Last week was the week of Winter Mako, and it was a very good week. I spent all week in Cambridge, Maryland, and it was a record turnout for Maryland Association of Counties Winter Conference. Had a lot of good input, a lot of new elected officials, both county and statewide. The participation was overwhelming. Commissioner Harvey and I were there. The theme was Hit the Ground Running, specifically for so many new elected individuals. The transition of leadership at Mako, the board of directors was sworn in by Lieutenant Governor Rutherford on Thursday night, and again, all in all, it was just well attended. A number of participants, both sponsors and vendors, presenting their wares of insurance and logistics for public, local, and statewide government. So, anything you'd like to add, or?
I learned that they do a lot to help counties influence and shape legislation and how they do it, and the contacts that I think you have and that I'm beginning to make through that organization will serve Washington County well. Also, just one other thing, I think you're more aware of it than I am, but some of the limits that are placed upon county governments by the state, it was good to learn some of the details about that, because I didn't realize some of the limits that we had in certain areas, so that was very good for me.
Well, for me, being back, whether you want to call it a 4-year hiatus, walking in with so many other friends and colleagues from around the state, and it's no secret I've been tagged as Mr. Mako, I think from my year as president, and I was asked to participate in several of the sessions and conference, and I was a mentor in a session, so I'm very honored to serve Mako and be involved. And as I've repeated a number of times, as a past president, all it takes is a phone call, and I'm available, and I'm a yes, and I'll be there. So again, I appreciate everyone's support here. Mako is very important. It's the most well-respected advisory to state government across the board, across all 24 jurisdictions. The folks in Annapolis lean on and expect a lot of interaction with Mako. So again, thank you very much. And thank you to everyone for the 3 or 4 weeks that we've been off through the holidays, and keeping up with local events and different venues. With that, Krista has given me this Thursday at 2 o'clock, there's a grand opening, is at First Breach, Showalter Road. So there's an event there at 2 o'clock on Thursday. Then on Friday, there's a, at 3 p.m., there is a grand opening, new location, Premier Spine and Sports Medicine, 13114 Pennsylvania Avenue. So if any of us can, make an appearance at either or both of those. So the other thing that's put on here, I know it's what, 2 weeks away, I guess. January 25th, Day in Annapolis Legislative Luncheon. They are requesting, luncheon reservations, and the timeline is, I think, probably in the next couple of days. Yeah, they need to know. So if anyone's considering going to Annapolis that is Wednesday, January the 25th. It's the Washington County Day in Annapolis. I think Leadership Washington County's there, the Chamber's there, the Greater Hagerstown Committee's there. The who's who of Washington County is in Annapolis that day, if you're not familiar. And they do have a luncheon. I think it's at the Maryland Inn. I don't know. I'm looking at Krista.
I think it's at Callaway's.
Is it
this year?
Okay, okay. Either way, it's a luncheon in Annapolis, and they do require reservations for that. So if anyone plans to attend, please let Krista know. Any other comments from the commissioners, thoughts, additional items? Anyone? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move right into staff comments. And first up is Tom Brown.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Tom Brown, Director of Emergency Management. This morning, I would like to provide you with an update on the 2021 State Homeland Security Grant. When we applied for this grant, one of the projects created was to purchase automatic external defibrillators, or AEDs, to ensure that each law enforcement cruiser in the county and the officers in those vehicles had access to this crucial piece of medical equipment. As we have seen lately in sports news, the quick use of an AED device greatly enhances the chances of a person surviving a cardiac event. I'm happy to report today that Emergency Management has received those devices and will begin distribution by providing 5 to the Hancock Police Department this afternoon. On Thursday afternoon, the Boonsboro Police Department will receive 5, and the Smithsburg Police Department will receive 4. This project also allowed for 1 AED to be placed in each of the 3 emergency management vehicles. As a second part of this project, this specific project out of this grant, we'll be working with the Hagerstown Police Department to determine how many cruisers are without an AED. From past discussions with the chief of that department and their administration, most of their vehicles already had them. So the reason why this first round is going to Smithsburg, Boonsboro, Hancock is because they didn't have any, or the ones that they had were beginning to reach the end of their life cycle. Also, just so that you're aware, from the 2021 State Homeland Security Grant, we have been able to purchase 5 mobile data terminals, or computers for the vehicles, for the Hagerstown Community College campus police and some other small miscellaneous police equipment that they needed. These mobile data terminals are going to allow the campus police to connect to the county computer-aided dispatch system, providing real-time information to the officers. It'll provide them with the means to research wanted persons and run driver's license checks, write reports, check and send email, and provide them with greater situational awareness. This purchase is going to allow the officers to provide better service and greater protection to the students, the faculty, and the visitors to that campus. One thing to note with this State Homeland Security Grant is that 30% of the total funding must be utilized towards law enforcement initiatives, which we did meet that 30%. But also from this same grant, we will also be able to provide portable ventilators from one project in the grant and portable ultrasound devices from another to EMS. Through previous year awards, we've also been able to provide fire with needed equipment, including handheld chemical device detection devices, cleaning agents, and water rescue equipment. The reason why I wanted to bring this information forward to you today is I know that oftentimes, specifically in my office, we may bring requests each year to apply for these grants. At that time, we tell you what is in those grants, what those projects are, but I wanted to bring this forward to let you know that we are actually able to make purchases that are going to benefit the citizens in different communities throughout the county. And quite honestly, we are very excited to get these AEDs specifically out to these municipalities.
Tom, I assume that from your conversation that our deputies all have already equipped, right?
My understanding is they do, but when we have the conversation with Hagerstown Police Department, we're going to have a conversation with the sheriff and his staff and make sure that they all have one too.
Tom, thank you for that update and all you do for emergency services. I'm kind of curious, with the AED devices going out to those police forces, is any kind of training required in order to know how to use that device? And are we providing that training as well, or?
So training for the use of these AED devices is done through advanced CPR training,
Okay.
which most, if not all, the departments and their officers already have. So when they recert for their CPR certification, the use of the AED device is part of that training.
Okay.
So that's not something that we have to do.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Jonathan Horowitz.
Thank you, sir.
Morning, Commissioners. Jonathan Horowitz, Director of the Department of Business Development. I'm here today to ask for the board's approval to send a letter of support to the City of Hagerstown's Mayor and City Council in support of a request for an exception to their wastewater and water policy under the Economic Development Exception 6. I've provided you with a map just that you can see clearly the geographic area that we're speaking about. This is east of Maryland 63, north of 40 in the planned industrial section of the Washington County zoning. This request is coming from Trammell Crow Company. This property is 224 acres, and the issue with this and the reason that we need support and a letter of request over to the City Council is half of this property roughly is inside the MRGA, the medium range growth area, and half is outside of it. So we're going to require a special exception from the City of Hagerstown in order to provide municipal water service to this property.
So, Jonathan, we're looking at 1 through 6, is that what am I reading this correctly?
On your map?
Yeah.
We're looking at the star on your map.
Okay.
So the star on your map indicates
Right.
where this request is coming from, and you can see that it's located right next to an area labeled G.
Did we know about 1 through 6 already?
Yes.
Okay.
The area labeled G is one of those areas that's in discussion between the city and the county to add to the MRGA. And for about the last 2 years, we've been operating under that assumption that those are approved, as well as the city has as well. Any questions?
What did you say? You're operating on the assumption that what is approved?
So there's been negotiations between the city and the county's planning departments on the boundary of the MRGA, the medium range growth area. Those additions and subtractions are somewhat fluid based on the use of water, EDUs, the equivalent dwelling units of water. So when we enter those negotiations with the city, there's a lot of calculation that goes into that, mathematical calculations. And so there's a lag in between the approval and when those calculations are done. And with COVID impacting it, those areas labeled in green on your map are being assumed as approved by staff at both entities. The final approvals of those additions and subtractions would be part of, I believe, Jill's comp plan presentation.
Jonathan, are we to expand, that's a bad word maybe, but to move the star and some of the other things I see, have we shrunk the medium growth area somewhere else to accommodate here?
Yes,
So
there are subtractions listed on your map in red. It should be on there.
So there are subtractions, so if we've shrunk that, have we taken away property rights or legal rights or?
We've moved it. Yeah, I wouldn't call it shrunk. It's still based on the same amount of water usage that has not changed. So it's been pulled in certain areas and expanded out in other areas. So if you pull in on an area and you
Yeah, I get
move an
that.
area,
You accommodate here and you take away here. I get that.
and if you take away here, then you are removing the ability of those property owners to obtain municipal water, most likely. We could pursue an exception 6 request from the city, and they have the right to say yes or no.
Has the city agreed to supply water to their house?
That's what this letter will be for, to ask them.
But have they not already approved
No, they have not.
since it's inside the mid-range?
No, not this property because it straddles the boundary,
So, and the other half is in the county, correct?
correct?
Then if they do, would they request annexation of that other part of that property?
Absolutely.
So
That's their policy.
you said the areas in red on this map indicate what?
Subtractions. So in the negotiations about a year and a half ago, those are areas that were deemed less priority for economic development and/or we had less interest in it from actual developers at the time. And so we had more interest in the green areas or active interest. So we migrated the boundary to include areas where developers were looking to invest money.
Okay, so for example, Area 6 on the map? Do you have a map in front of you?
I do not, sorry, I didn't keep one.
Okay, it's just off of Jefferson Boulevard. In areas 1 and 2, those are all areas that the city's no longer going to provide water to as part of this?
Correct. Those are areas that they would deem not entitled to the water.
Not
You would have
entitled
to
to water.
pursue an exception request through their political body.
So, and I know everyone is probably aware of what these areas look like. The question about impacting property values, I think, Jeff, did you allude to that? If the owners thought that they had water that they could access through the city, Randy, for example, and if you're taking that away as a development option, does
Yeah, I
that
think what's
impact the
happened
value?
here, through the course of the last few years, we say there's a property up here that's not in that growth area that's really important economic development. So they've stretched that growth area up to capture that property because that's the most important. Correct me if I'm wrong here. And then by moving that growth area up, we've eliminated some properties that were in the growth area that now we moved them out. So your point is what my point was a little while ago. But we've discussed this, all of us have discussed this, because at that moment, it was really important to have this particular project possibly. So I guess now I'm starting to get concerned about the scarcity of water being distributed, that now we actually have to move this thing a whole bunch, and we will start taking away people who are in a proper area for, stop me if I'm wrong, Jonathan, we're in a proper area to get water, no longer are in that proper area, so we've basically devaluated their property. So I don't
not
know
an
what
expert
the
in the
answer
area.
is at this point, it's all about water. This is all about water.
Yes, it is.
So, I don't know what the answer is, because, you really need this project, but what happened to the poor people down here that might need a project in 2 years is not gonna be able to get that project? So you're right.
I think this needs to be looked at further, because the alarm bell that goes off for me is the assumption by people at city staff and the assumption by our staff to move this thing down the road without, maybe everyone else is more aware of it, but I, being new here, don't understand how this is all worked out, where we, at our level, provide the oversight and direction and guidance that, we're okay with this. Because this is almost a fait accompli is what you're talking about, because you've been working on it for a couple of years, but there's a real impact on people's livelihood or value of their property. And I just would like to learn more about this process, John.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, I don't think it's, they've been working on it, but I don't think it's complete by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm thinking, if I hear what you're saying, maybe what we should do is we should actually make this an agenda item and bring in, we can have Jill come from our planning department, so we can provide some of these answers to this particular issue. It's a bigger issue.
Right. And it
It's definitely
relates
a
to the
bigger issue.
comprehensive plan we're gonna be looking at too, I believe, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Why wouldn't we want the city to prove that they're gonna supply water, and then we ask for the exception, since the property is split? Why is it reversed?
This is the process that was in place previously, and to sort of address both of your comments and Derek's comments, this used to be sort of a moot point. We would just proceed through this process, the approvals would happen, but, roughly about a year ago, I guess the water scarcity issue became more finite for Hagerstown, and we started having more difficulty obtaining these exceptions.
Doesn't the city policy require that if a request is made by a developer for this, that part of the process is that the county would, if
Yeah.
the county supports that, the county would write a letter in support of that request?
Yeah, so the process was that the developer comes to the county's Economic Development Department in support of the project would come to you, ask for your approval to send this request to the city of Hagerstown. That became corrupted maybe 5 years ago or so.
The city could still say no, correct?
Yes, but
So-
the corruption happened, the developers have been sending the letters directly to Hagerstown, and then Hagerstown just waits for you to complete the rest of the process, so that's why it's backwards.
The project we're talking about is the east side of Greencastle Pike, north of Hewitt's.
Correct.
And that project is just for us to say, basically, can you supply water there?
Yes. And we're asking, that is an entire planned industrial park based on the comp plan and the zoning from the county. And so that is the plan for this property, and this will be an issue to move forward with the development of that park,
And this property is within the urban growth area.
the UGA, correct?
Mid-range.
Mid-range, yeah.
It's in the UGA, but the mid-range growth boundary, the MRGA, it's straddling that boundary, John.
But we're getting to trade-offs right now, is what you're telling us.
In terms of geographic pockets coming in and out,
Right, and the red areas versus the star, what comes in, what comes out.
Well, this is already in. I think this is about water now. This is already in. We didn't have to stretch anything to get this in
no,
here.
G is theoretically part of the MRGA, so
Yeah,
you can
right.
see where it's straddling it.
But it's about the water, and if you're not gonna give water, the red areas are gonna come out of. Is this gonna reduce the boundary then, for the growth area?
Yeah, the red areas will be areas where the boundary actually retracts inward.
Okay.
The green areas would be where the boundary is extended to. So it sounds like, and to follow up on the rest of the comments, this process was completed in staff comments for years, but now that we've gotten to this sort of, precipice, I believe that John may be right. Maybe
Yeah,
we
just
should
bring
make
down
this an
item, so
agenda
in
item.
the future, these should be agenda items.
Oh, and this one here, is the city likely to supply water if we send a letter?
I would say the city is likely to say no, in my opinion.
So I kind of like Commissioner Klein's comments that as we look at this maybe in a bit more detail down the road as an agenda item, we discuss the process of what comes first, and kind of like we're grappling the chicken or the egg, but if we don't have final approval, if our vote really at the end of the day doesn't mean anything because we need the city's approval, why wouldn't it go before the city first? Maybe it's done in a process where both the city and the county are notified, so we get a heads up at that time, and we can make sure a request may not languish. But I just think back to when we had the outcry from citizens maybe a year or so ago at Hagerstown Community College about the expansion at Black Rock development. This board ended up denying that request, but a City of Hagerstown council member quipped to me after that. He said, you know what, that you guys didn't have to go through all that process and that hassle, and the citizens didn't either, because he said, I can tell you, we wouldn't have approved that. And that's just frustrating, that why go through that process and waste staff's time, waste the citizens' time, get the citizens anxious and nervous about something that really that's not our decision anyway. So I'd like that process to be looked at. I think that's a good point.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah, and I guess another question I like that, just let's reverse this process.
I absolutely
If
agree.
we're not gonna approve it, why are we?
Yeah, why we haven't
Operation
using our,
utility, and no disrespect to the city, but if it falls upon them, then maybe they should take the lead.
does the developer can't go directly to the city? Do they have to come through us first?
They do, and that's, over the last 5 years, that's the corruption that's happened in the process, but unfortunately, the city just sits and waits on them until you send your letter of concurrence to present it to their political body.
Because the city's created a process that one of the steps is that the county will provide a letter of support.
Correct.
So if the county doesn't provide a letter of support,
They don't
will
even-
not take any action.
They don't hear it at a session.
Just to clarify, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but these red and green areas that you're showing, I mean, that's not really this particular situation, right? It shows that it's within the red area, but we're not changing the boundaries relating to this particular request, right?
Correct, but this development straddles that G area.
Right, so.
Which again gets into that gray area of whether the city council's members have approved that or not. And I think that, I don't know if that's been retained as an option or what that is, but
Yeah, so I mean,
we haven't
But
finalized
the water directly impacts
Everybody, yeah.
these other 6 areas.
It does. So, I mean, my suggestion is that we put this on as an agenda item for the next commissioner meeting,
Right.
and make sure that Jill's here and anybody else we need here to have this further discussion. And in the future, when these requests come in, they will just be agenda items, they will not be during staff comments.
So do we need to make a motion of some type here?
You do not, I mean,
No.
if it's a consensus.
I'll follow up with
Yeah, we'll just
Krista
put it
with
on
an
the
R.
agenda.
It's on for the next meeting, if you could follow that up.
Yep, I'll follow up with Krista with an R.
Jonathan,
Thank you, Jonathan.
Jonathan, excuse me, one question I have, and maybe you've already answered it, but the parcels 1 through 6, under this plan proposed for removal, are those individual property owners aware of this? That,
I don't think so, because it hasn't been finalized, so there hasn't been a formal change to their property designation.
this could be a shock of their life, that they're sitting there banking, maybe even having mortgages or loans based upon the value of their property, and all of a sudden, all 6 of these are devalued by this plan.
I don't know enough, I'm not an expert to know that the land would be devalued for its ability to obtain municipal water, but, you know, Randy's a real estate agent, and so is Wayne, I'm sure.
It very well could be. I mean, I sit on a bank board and, you know, we evaluate a parcel or a property for, lending. That's a big factor.
It would definitely impact density of housing, because we have to go to septic and wells.
I mean,
Yeah, I was gonna say, obviously, when these are put together as part of either a comprehensive plan or another plan, I mean, all those things are taken into consideration. And one thing I will just say, just to clarify, the lawyer in me says I should say this, that you have, when you were talking about the process, the change in the process and how the process works and whether it works correctly is what you meant when you used the word corruption. There's no corruption here.
Yeah, no,
There's no corruption here. It was just a change in the process.
yeah, the process.
If you're listening,
And
please take note.
Yeah, there was, I don't want anybody to
Yeah.
think that. I
Bad
don't
word
want
in
anybody to
the-
think that. It was just there was a breakdown in the process.
Yes, bad word in the political realm, you're right, sorry. It's,
Sorry,
the
it
process.
makes me nervous when
The
somebody says
process
that.
itself is not being followed to the letter it
So you
was
gotta
written.
strike the word corruption from now on.
Strike that,
Right,
yes.
don't use that word.
yeah. Okay.
All right, thank you,
But just
gentlemen.
to
We'll
be
see you
clear-
back for an
One more ask related to this. It looks like the red parcels 1 and 2 may be bordering the town of Funkstown, and I can't really tell if that's, who might have potential development in that area. Would it be the city of Hagerstown? Would it be the city of Funkstown? But if it does border Funkstown and there was potential there for Funkstown, maybe the town council needs to, I'd like their opinion on whether and how that might affect them if water rights were taken away.
Right, and these are technically done through Jill's Office of Planning. So she's the one that technically calculates in the, the technical EDU values, the water values. So, and I will bring her back on our agenda item, because she'll be the expert on those things.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Yeah. I have the Washington County Recreation and Parks Advisory Board requesting that you accept the recommendation to reappoint Bradley Tritch to serve a third three-year term. It's going to be retroactive, October 1 through September 30th of 2025. And with the approval to accept his reappointment, we request an exemption to the two-term limit as written in the bylaws. And I have one other one, if you wanted to approve them separate or together.
Let's do them separate. I think that's best.
Which board again was it now?
Recreation and Parks Advisory
What's the
Board.
person's name?
Bradley Tritch.
Yeah, I thought we already did that.
No, I don't think so. I think we put it on hold.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I'm good with it.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay.
And the second, they're requesting you accept the recommendation to reappoint Robin Papa to serve a second three-year term through 10/1 through 9/30/25.
I think we had a discussion at one point, and I don't think we've come to a determination as to how we want to move forward on it, Mr. President, about the limits that we have in policy and these requests for exception to policy for being appointed beyond the two terms. So how and when are we going to make that determination? Because I think it's good business to have, clear-cut guidance that we follow, because then the risk is we wind up doing exceptions all the time, and therefore you don't have a policy.
Right, there's a written policy that says a two-term limit, so that's why they were specifically asking for an exception. So, if the commissioners would like to discuss making a change in that policy, or just the policy itself, we can place that on for discussion.
Well, we have one or two boards that we only get that have required electrical license or plumbing license, and I think we've had that in the past where no one's applied. So there might be something we'd have to consider why we would reappoint someone
Trade specific.
if we don't have.
But I think it is a good point that if we have a policy that we continue to make exceptions to, then I think what you're all talking
And
about.
I think
Maybe we shouldn't have a policy.
the question is, sometimes those exceptions are made inconsistently. For some people, we'll extend a third term,
Right.
some people we won't. And I think that's not the right way of doing it. So either you do it for everyone, or you do it for no one.
Yeah, and the policy has you have to be off the board a year, so there's another opportunity for that person to reapply.
And that would just be an inconsistent, execution of that policy.
Right. So I think we need to have an agenda item to discuss that policy and so we can provide that policy and discuss about what that policy should look like moving forward.
To discuss and vote on it?
Sure.
Okay.
All right.
So with that said, we want to put these on hold?
I'm okay moving forward.
I'm okay
Go ahead
with
and
these
move
right
forward.
now, and we go forward with a new policy later.
Is everybody?
Okay.
Yeah,
okay with
I'm
that?
good.
I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve Brad Tritch for a third term with notice that we're deviating from the policy of a two-term limit, an exception to that policy, and then approve Robin Papa for a term, both on the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee.
I'll second it.
Okay. Comment? Motion and second on the floor. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you, gentlemen. 5-0.
There'll be another submission for Julie Sanders to be renewed for a second term. I don't know if they got in touch with you or not, but at their meeting last week, they recommended her to fulfill a second.
We'll put that on
Okay, make sure,
a future meeting.
get hold of
item.
Jamie and on them to do that.
Okay. Anything else, Krista?
That's all.
Before we move into staff citizens participation, John?
Just a few things. I know we're running behind. Thank you, President Barr. Good morning, Commissioners. I just want to follow up on some of the comments that were made earlier about some of the events that happened over the holidays. I just wanted to thank our county and city staff who addressed that. I know Commissioner Harvey already thanked them, but I wanted to thank them. I know there were a lot of people who were involved in that over Christmas. I know I participated in a few calls on Christmas Eve and Christmas morning. I know a lot of staff did, but a lot of people were out at those sites and doing that work at that time. So that was county and city staff, so I wanted to thank everybody for that. And also, the county had some issues, as a lot of people did in Washington County, with the cold weather, with some frozen pipe issues. We had county staff out on Christmas Day and the day after Christmas trying to deal with some of those issues, so I wanted to thank them as well. I did want to thank, on behalf of the county, Governor Hogan and his team for the announcement last week about the $100 million in funding for Phase 2 of the I-81 project. That's a long time coming. It's been a high priority for Washington County, everybody in Washington County. A lot of different groups and organizations have been lobbying for that for a long time. That's Phase 2. There's more to come, so we'll continue that. But I know Governor Hogan and his team made that announcement last week, and I know just on behalf of the county, I wanted to thank the governor for that. One other thing, the new Board of County Commissioners schedule for 2023 is available, and that includes meeting with municipalities and evening meetings. So I know I see Paulie in the back because he's asked me about that. So that's something the commissioners had done on a regular basis, and through COVID and some other things that hasn't happened over the last 2 years, but the new schedule does provide for that. So that'll be times when, as the commissioners will recall, we'll meet during the day, and then we'll also meet in the evening with municipalities. So that schedule is available, and Krista has been scheduling those. So those are out there. And
Get that, John, 15 million to Fort Ritchie.
oh yeah, one other thing. There was I think Governor Hogan announced yesterday a $15 million tax credit for I think projects at Fort Ritchie. So that's another. I think that came out yesterday, I believe. So thank Governor Hogan for that too. So Governor Hogan's been working for us for 8 years. He's done a lot of great things for Washington County, and he's continued right up to the end. So I want to thank him for that. And obviously we look forward to working with the new administration. I think the inauguration is the 18th, so we'll have a new administration. So we're looking forward to working with them, and as we transition to a lot of new faces in Annapolis. And that's, so I think it was mentioned, I think President Bohr mentioned the day in Annapolis, which is January 25th. So I don't know how many commissioners are planning on attending either part of that or all of that. Starts with the luncheon and then meetings during the afternoon and then the reception in the evening. So
You driving?
I'm not sure who's going. I'm not sure where we're going to park because the parking garage where we always park is no longer there, but we'll figure something out. So
John, just to clarify, the money for I-81 and some of the other projects, they're not a done deal yet, correct? My understanding is
Right.
it's really a decision a future governor, future Board of Public Works will make.
It's kind of,
And
yeah,
so
but this was
we don't want to be complacent in any way, and we need to, I know our delegation's going to stay on that task, through MACO, we can express that importance, but
Yeah,
we don't
will
rest
too.
easy at this point.
not
We
over
will
till
too,
it's
but this was
over,
a,
said you.
right, you're right, but this was a big step in Governor Hogan doing this on his, in his last few weeks. But yes, we're gonna continue to do that. We'll continue to work with, again, with the new administration and, all the new secretaries that we'll have down there. And it'll continue to be a high priority, and not just for this Phase 2, the construction of Phase 2, but, we have Phase 3. We had 3 and 4, but I think we're going to combine that into one phase. So we still have a long way to go. So we have to continue to be, as you said, diligent and continue to push that. So I think that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Kurt, anything? Okay, let's move into citizens' participation. I apologize if citizens have been patiently waiting, but we have anyone? Mayor?
For the record, my name is Howard McCall, I'm mayor of the town of Tewksbury. I have a presentation
Staff need to get a picture. You get staff to get a picture.
John, I apologize. We tried to get it changed, but it's already been shipped to us and delivered. It's to the Honorable Jeffrey A. Klein, President of Washington County Board of County Commissioners.
Thank you very much.
Can I get John and Jeff?
We want to all get up here. We'll get the staff back.
Hop out front if we can.
Appreciate that. The young lady's gonna take a picture, and I think Paul's gonna take one too.
Let's get a picture of John and I'd like to. Thank you.
Thank you.
It'll just cost you breakfast.
I know, well, that's all right.
Breakfast at the Redbird.
Again, thank you, Joseph.
We'll pass the flag. That's a very nice one.
No, I tell you, that is, if everyone got to see that, it's, thank you. For the flag. Thank you, sir.
John, you can hang it on your wall.
I think that's the prettiest plaque I've seen, Aaron. You get an award for that.
That is nice.
Yeah, very appropriate for Boonesboro.
Nice.
That goes in your office, Mr. Klein. Any other citizens' participation this morning? It's last chance. Okay, let's move right into supported legislation for upcoming legislative session. That's a tongueful. Sheriff Brian Albert. Sheriff, good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Happy New Year. So I have, I'm here for consensus for support the legislation. Both of these bills are separate now. Last year, they were submitted by Sheriff Mullendore to the Western delegation, and they were combined. They needed to be, the delegation have requested for them to be separated, and and they were asking for support at the delegation has their legislative meeting. I think it was on December 12th, and they asked for us to have the support of the county commissioners before they would move them forward into delegation. So the first bill would be basically representation for the employees of the Sheriff's Department, the sworn officers of the sheriff's side, and also detention. So they'd be two separate, basically a bargaining, they'd have a voice, and I think it designates John Monterano or the county administrator and myself would be the people that they would meet with currently. This gives them a little bit of voice with all the degradation of the police accountability boards and the past legislation in Annapolis that took away the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights. I was 28 years in law enforcement and always had those protections. This gives them a little bit of a voice and kind of an insurance policy that we have their back. So I'll open that one up to any questions, if we have any on it.
Commissioner Barr, President Barr, it says consensus or a motion. What is being requested?
I'm not sure. I think they,
Motion?
a motion.
Well, I'll make the motion to support.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion second in favor of support. Any comments? All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. 5-0.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
The other bill that would be supported was the sheriff's salary, and I just want to make this clear. It's not an increase to salary. It just ties it to a state pay scale, and that would be 90% of the current state's attorney salary in the county.
Same one as last year, right?
Same as last year, and it pretty much takes it out of the commissioner's hands and puts it in legislation that there are 8 counties that are eight sheriffs that's already tied to state positions. Some of them are with the state police, some of them with state's attorney, some of them are the equal to a circuit court judge. It seems like every sheriff is tied to another position somehow. It may be in the county though, and not state, and that's why it's not in a state statute.
Yeah, I think every 5 years we have a salary commission that makes that recommendation. By doing this, that eliminates you out of their recommendation
Absolutely.
to the commissioners.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second, just a question, Sheriff Albert.
Yes.
when we do the salary study that Commissioner Klein had talked about, usually those new salaries don't go into effect until the position goes through a reelection process.
Correct.
Would that be the same?
That's the same
here?
with this. This
Just to let everyone
legislation would
know.
not take place until till 2026.
So for you to benefit in any way,
Correct.
you have to stand before the public again. Just want to make that
Absolutely.
clear.
Yes. Thanks for clarifying it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Ready to vote? All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sheriff. Yes, I would like to call for a motion to convene as the Board of Health.
Motion to convene as Board of Health.
Second.
Motion and a second for convene as a Board of Health. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. 5-0. Expansion of mental health crisis services in Washington County. Earl Stoner, Health Officer, Washington County Health Department, and Dan Triplett, Administrator.
Good
morning.
morning. We also have Victoria Sterling, our Behavioral Health Director, with us today. So first off, as the President pointed out, is expansion of mental health services, specifically crisis services within Washington County. We are asking the commissioners to approve through us awarding $104,292 to Way Station. That they have a pretty extensive crisis, specifically a mobile crisis service that they are operating now. And this would expand that, I think specifically looking at salaries to expand more workers on, basically moving to a 24/7 type operation. When those crises happen, they can respond to those on site and work with that individual to obviously de-escalate, get them into some sort of treatment, whatever it may be.
Just so I'll know, Earl, give me an example real quick of who would go in there and why?
Who would go in where?
And why, yeah. And what would be at 2 in the morning or so?
Oh, so it could be a substance use disorder issue, could be an individual who's overdosed, or it could be an individual suffering from a mental health crisis. Police may be, are most often called. Mobile crisis would also respond. Police would make that determination to say, this really isn't, a criminal issue or anything of that nature. It's more along the lines of, they're having a mental breakdown. They're having, some sort of trauma has been incurred. It would be turned over to that mobile crisis worker who then would work with the individual.
So they would bring them in here on Potomac Street or wherever it's at, and the crisis worker, no,
you can,
Want me to-
yeah.
So this grant actually extends the hours for about 100 hours a week. So this is the evening hours and then Saturday and Sunday. So they can be dispatched by law enforcement. They wouldn't necessarily bring them anywhere. They would actually come to the scene and work with the family. It would either be determined that they might need to go to the emergency room, so they might do an EP. They're really trying to avoid that and stabilize them in the community. But then there's follow-up, so they would follow up with them the next day and try to link them to services.
Yeah, I saw Potomac, that's where the office is, Potomac Street, yeah, okay.
But this is for their mobile crisis.
Right, gotcha.
This isn't necessarily in lieu of the emergency room, but this might be the first.
Yes,
First step.
it's basically a diversion. It's for people that really don't need to go to the emergency room or that are taking up law enforcement time. That's really not necessary.
Because a lot of times what you find is just going through a de-escalation with that individual, and then a follow-up that next day or hours later, and then helping them navigate through the system is really what's needed, as opposed to then going to in essence, the emergency department and, utilizing resources that aren't necessary.
Can you provide me a little bit of information on the dates? It looks like maybe we're using the grant to pay for something retroactively, so it's not a full year. And then for the next fiscal year, would the grant restart? Is this something?
This is on a federal year.
Federal, yeah.
So the first half will go from October 1st to June 30th, and then we'll start again, June 3rd. We break it down 9 months and 3 months because of our system. So we'll go to July 1, right? And then it'll start again July 1 to the end of September. Will it be renewed? It is part of the state opioid response, and it's 3, so I would imagine that it will be. There'll be funding, so it will continue.
Yeah, in essence, these are federal funds that we receive that we have to squeeze and work within the state fiscal budget, which are two different.
At the same time, I can only extend the contract through the period that we know that we have the funding. And then if we are refunded for it for next fiscal year, we'll put a
So-
new contract in.
So the service has been provided since October 1st?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Earl or Victoria? Victoria, correct?
Yes.
Just, this is a good program. It's important. The de-escalation, I think, is really important. My question is, police arrive on the scene after being called. There's a lag in time. They make a determination, and then they call you. What's the response time to get someone to?
It would depend on the situation and where the incident's located. Sometimes they can be dispatched. So if I called 911, say my son was having a crisis, I can ask for mobile crisis, so they can be automatically dispatched. So Way Station works very closely with the 911 system.
So, okay, that's what's going to be my next question. You know, who makes that determination, and the 911 system is trained and ready to go ahead and make those determinations as to appropriate response, that the police would need to go there as well as a de-escalation behavioral team?
It just depends. They have CAD too, so they can watch the calls, and they can even radio and ask if they would like support. So there's sort of that partnership with law enforcement and EMS and fire.
Okay. I just want to make sure that all the decision makers that can influence the response are educated and trained in how to do that, and it's not up to the people that are calling 911 to say we need something.
No. Lucy Bill runs the mobile crisis, and she has extensive history and experience. She started out developing the system in Colorado, and she's done lots of trainings, and that is part of another grant we have with them because we have several. But they train the academy and they train the officers. So we have a really good relationship with law enforcement, EMS, with that training.
Good, thank you. I'm looking forward to learning more.
Yeah, I just wanted all questions for education for me, but I'd motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you. The next item is Community Mobile Health Contract, Earl Stoner and Dan and Victoria.
All right. So the next is to award $76,134 to Meredith Medical Center to basically establish a mobile health program. They have a pretty state-of-the-art mobile health unit that they've been utilizing for some time now, specifically targeting COVID vaccinations and testing. But in partnership with them, we're really looking at expanding it out and looking at health disparities from communities that are historically marginalized, communities of color, geographically isolated communities. They are going to be taking that unit out in conjunction and partnership with us to various and assorted sites throughout the county to make sure that, basically individuals have access to care. Specifically, their focus is primary care, really focusing on identifying individuals, obviously who are in need of primary care, but also mental health, substance use disorder. And for us, we're looking at partnering with them to continue doing mobile COVID testing, doing potentially mobile COVID vaccination also. So it's really a focus, the program is focused on looking at those health disparities, specifically access issues, and putting our resources together to take those services out to where the people are.
Basically, if the citizens want a service, you're going to take it to them instead of relying on them to come to you.
In essence. And again, from the primary care perspective, that'll all be handled by Meritus. Obviously, if any specialty care is needed, they'll be referred and navigated through that also.
Do you know, Earl or anyone, the mobile unit, will it also be available? It will be available throughout all of Washington County?
Throughout the whole county.
So certainly, there's pockets in the city of Hagerstown that those residents could use this service, but also in rural outlying communities where you don't have a county commuter access
Yes.
to get to your doctor's office.
And that's the whole principle behind the program. And actually, they've been throughout COVID. I think they've had it for a little over a year now. They've actually been doing that. We have more sort of like brick and mortar vaccination and testing clinics, and they've had like the actual mobile unit that to go out to. They've been down through the Jonathan Street community, working with the Hispanic community up Hancock, South County, you name it. So that in essence, that's the whole principle of the program, to get it out to the people, not necessarily from a cultural perspective, could be geographically isolated. People can't get down to the city center, people can't get to Meritus, people can't get to the health department. So that's the premise of it.
So then is it either the health department or Meritus who contacts those communities, maybe a municipality, and not every area in the county is in a municipality, but to let that community know in some fashion what might be best for them to, hey, the mobile unit's coming today, free health checkups, whatever the service is. Not everybody uses social media.
Yes, we both do that.
Okay.
Meaning the health department and Meritus. We contact them and actually set up a schedule and all that good stuff.
You guys have done a real good job of getting out of the community already with the things you do. So this just enables it, it enhances us with the mobile that could get maybe to, if you're in a church in Hancock, maybe up on Maple Ridge Road or somewhere.
Right.
You could get there if you wanted to. Or
Well, and it really,
Maple Ridge Road, but
it kills two birds with one stone.
White Oak Ridge.
COVID money's drying up, so the activities that we're doing, we really need to take a hard look. We, health department, at, really in the next couple months, all of our COVID money is gone. So how are we going to continue to, provide, especially from an access perspective, provide specifically testing and vaccination services to individuals? And we already know that Meritus has been doing it and has a state-of-the-art, mobile van that they're going to be doing some primary care in and going out and hopefully expanding to specialty care. Why don't we put these together and develop this program and continue it for the citizens throughout the county?
Motion to approve.
Well, I just had one before we get to that. Appreciate that. I've not yet had an opportunity to come to your office, Mr. Stoner, and to learn more about what's going on, but the mobile aspect of this is great. The red flag for me is the mRNA vaccinations and the high risk for, in a number of areas, as we've learned more and more and more, and through peer-reviewed studies, the problematic nature of it for significant segments of our population. So I'm looking forward to learn more and about making sure that anyone who's getting the shot is completely aware of the risk of the mRNA to their immune system, as well as for cardiomyocytitis and other complications, especially young athletes. So.
For mRNA, you've seen research regarding
Yes, and
mRNA?
we can provide that to you. It's been provided and it's been briefed on Capitol Hill. And peer-reviewed studies, particularly coming out of Europe, have substantiated that. Dramatic increases in heart issues for athletes year over year. And, from just 15 to 1,500 in 1 year for athletes having heart issues. A third of the University of Southern California football team had myocarditis after getting the shot. Some are still not able to compete after having the shot a year ago because of myocarditis. So this is the type of thing that I'd like to learn more about and how we're informing people before they get the shot.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments? We do have a motion on the floor. Commissioner Wagner, we have a second.
Second.
Okay, motion is second to approve the mobile health contract. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you, 5-0. Okay, next item, adolescent clubhouse contract. Earl, you're back up.
All right. So this one is to award Horizon Goodwill Industries $276,494.99 to basically continue operations for an adolescent clubhouse program here in Hagerstown. That really is a program that provides alternatives, services, and programs for adolescents to basically, hopefully, keep them out of trouble, keep them off the street. Horizon Goodwill has been operating, as I mentioned, the program for the past year. It's been pretty well received in the community, and we are looking to extend that. I believe that we advertised it on Maryland Marketplace and also published it on our website, the RFP, and Horizon Goodwill was the only responsive bid that we got, correct? And these funds also would be through the, totally through the Behavioral Health Administration at Maryland Department of Health.
I have a question on this right out of the gate. Do you have any metrics or data that shows, besides being generally well-received, that there are successes, that you have a real impact, and how many are impacted, and that type of thing? I could go through a list of questions I have, but you understand where I'm going.
Yes, I'll turn it over to Vicki, but there's evidence informed and well-established curriculum that's followed along with metrics and.
So this is, again, state opioid response funding, and we're required to follow SAMHSA reporting guidelines. So we do monthly reports, and then we do an end-of-the-year report, and I can share that with the county commissioners. I can just email it to John. Last year, they served approximately 45 youth. They also were able to place families, because not only do they work with the youth, but they also work with the families. And so they were able to help and support families find housing. A lot of their youth were homeless. Some came from the Dagmar, some were just runaways, or I think one was in foster care, but they found a permanent placement. So there's lots of different stories and successes that come out of it. So we can share that data with you. But we are required to strictly report to the Behavioral Health Administration.
I think that's really important to have the successes and what the real impact is, so that the community understands that we do have some programs that are actually working.
Yes, and they're required to use evidence-based practices such as SBIRT, strengthening families, mindfulness. They do homework, meditation, things like that.
Okay. Any other?
Second.
Okay, motion is second to approve. All in favor by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Thank you, gentlemen. Last but not least, crisis beds contract. Mr. Stoner, you're up again.
Last but not least, this would be to award $112,491 to Emeritus Medical Center for expansion of their crisis bed and stabilization services. I believe this would, in total, go toward peer recovery specialists who work at Emeritus, but more specifically in the emergency department for individuals when they come in. And they're also linked in with, obviously, mobile crisis. And I don't know if you have anything else you want to add about it, but.
So this is salary, again, through SOAR.
Yeah.
And it funds 4 positions at Emeritus Medical Center for their peer support specialists that are in the emergency room. And then they are connected and warm handoff to our peers in the community that are through our crisis response.
I would motion to support it. I think this is really good. And for anyone here who has not actually spent time in the emergency services, if you go in there and spend an evening at Emeritus, they deal with quite a number of very difficult situations. And we should, all recognize and commend the staff there for what they do, because they deal with these sorts of issues with people that are very troubled every night.
Second.
Okay, motion is second to approve.
With a comment not necessarily related to this, but since we have some members of our health department here and we service the Board of Health, I think it might be helpful if at a future meeting, we could have a a significant portion of time to learn more about the health department. I know you're state employees, at least you are, Earl, and we have a role that I think could be better clarified for us. We're coming out of the COVID pandemic, and of course, the opioid crisis is something that's ongoing. So I think it would be helpful if we could really dive in a little deeper to our roles as the Board of Health, your responsibilities and what you're doing, and hearing some of those success stories.
Sure,
So we know, have a better idea of what's going on.
sure, just let me know.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor for approval. We have a second. Wayne? Okay. All in favor by saying aye? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Earl, I'll reach out to
Yeah,
you.
wait,
I'll reach out to you.
yeah,
Okay.
What we can do for that.
Gotcha.
thank you. Need a motion to reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners of Washington County, Maryland.
Motion to reconvene as Board of County Commissioners.
Okay, motion is second to reconvene. All in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, 5-0. Thank you. Funding request for infrastructure project, Mayor Howard Long, Town of Boonesboro. You're up.
Thank you, gentlemen, for having us this morning. I brought our town manager, Paul Mantello, along. Most of you know Paul. He's done a lot of hard work on this project. Again, thank you for everything you've done for us in the past. Most of you know why we're here. It's the Campus Avenue controlled intersection line up with Chase 6 Boulevard at Maple Avenue with traffic lights. John and Derek, I know Derek's familiar with it. He's been some of our mayor and council meetings and at other meetings when it's been discussed. So I hope you had a chance to review the package that we sent you guys, and I'd like to turn it over to Paul. And again, thank you all for everything you've done for us.
And as Howard mentioned, we already provided you your packets. If you have anything you need us to expand on, please just let me know. The summary is, though, that we have an intersection along Maple Avenue, immediately adjacent to the educational complex, and where Campus Avenue currently connects is an uncontrolled intersection. There are no crosswalks there. And going back a little bit further, around 2 years ago, the educational campus changed their dismissal routes, and buses were traveling through some of the smaller collector roads in town, and it made us realize that, we don't have adequate sidewalk infrastructure in town and adequate pedestrian safety infrastructure, and that maybe we needed to take a closer look. And in doing so, we realized that there was an issue at the intersection of Campus Avenue and Maple Avenue. The developer across the street came to us and is interested in building about another 200 homes as the next phase of the Fletcher's Grove subdivision. And he is willing to work with us along with State Highway, along with Potomac Edison, the Washington County Public Schools. There's a lot of different agencies involved in this project to put a controlled intersection and to realign Campus Avenue to meet at a single intersection with the future Chase 6 Boulevard at Maple Avenue. And that's what we're here asking for funding for today.
Paul, I see you got 200 legislative bond, you got 200,000 MDOT, right?
Correct.
And you're asking for 520,000 from us. And this is all about safety, right?
Yes, sir.
So who else has money in it?
So MDOT has 200,000. We got another legislative bond initiative for.
That's 400 you were secured. If we're five,
Right.
is Washington County Public Schools putting any money into it?
No.
Is Boonesboro putting any money into it?
If we have to, yes, sir.
So it's three funding sources right now, potentially us and the two that you already secured.
Right.
Correct.
I just wanted to clarify all that.
And I'll just say that there is some land that's owned by the Board of Education that would have to be part of this
project.
Correct.
That's
There-
correct.
Yes, there's a land swap that would have to occur between a private property owner and the county.
And does that land actually transfer to county ownership?
Yes, it would be a 1 acre to 1 acre
Right,
land swap.
and that's on the east side of Maple Road?
It's on the south side. of
South
Maple.
side, yeah.
South side, okay. And in your discussions with the school board, can you share any of their communication about funding for a school safety issue?
The project, as we planned it, was originally planned to be 100% grant funded. Unfortunately, due to inflation and supply chain issues, the cost has increasingly gone up as the project was being planned and as we, hit road bumps along the way. Originally, the project was a little over $400,000, and our MDOT grant and bond bill would have paid for the whole thing. That, since then, and that's only been about a year ago. Since then, the project has now ballooned to $920,000.
Just one other comment, then maybe you could respond. Can you characterize the value of what the power company and the developers' contributions are going to be to this? Because I think it's fairly significant. And then just acknowledge that, Paul and Mr. Mayor, your whole team and the council have been working this very, very hard for well over a year. And you've been through a lot of changes as not just the costs have gone up, but dealing with different bureaucracies and legislators. So this is about safety, as Randy said, and the data that you provided about traffic is important, and there's a lot of foot traffic that will go over that very busy road, especially with the expansion, so you're trying to get ahead of it. So,
Right now, we currently have 21 students crossing that, running across that road to get to school every day. They come from the development over around Wise Markets and in that area. So, and there's more and more people moving into that area too, and more students are walking. Now, we do have a property owner involved, as you know. I know now, this is all new to me. We could have condemned that property. But gentlemen, I don't operate that way. I respect our residents and the people that pay taxes in Boonesborough. I'm willing to work with that guy and get his house and his business moved. And that's where the piece of acreage that the school board owner, you all own, that we're looking at to moving his business and his rental unit too.
I think my question, Macy, is not disputing anything you're saying, is from our financial staff, our CFO, how we fund it if we decide to fund it. It doesn't really have anything. I think we followed this long enough to know what your objective is and everybody's objective is.
Sure, that's fine. We don't expect an answer from you all today. We know you got to check it out and look around where you have the fundings and all. But we want to get started in this project as soon as the weather breaks. We like to get this done for the safety of the kids. And you said about the developers paying the expense of the intersection and the traffic signals and everything. That all falls on him.
And he's also paying for all of the
Engineering for us too.
So there will be a traffic signal at this location?
Yes, sir, with a push-button crosswalk too for all traffic to stop both ways. Not only will that be a safety for the kids, but that'll help us with the complaints we're getting from residents along that street. That will slow traffic down. They'll have to stop for a traffic light and then proceed through. Our ambulance company, they've estimated it'll save them approximately 5 to 7 minutes response from their ambulance hall to get to Farney Keedy and any points out around that area, because they would have to go down. The school bus traffic, it'll be the ones that have to go over to 68 or go out all in the 40. They won't have to go in and make that real sharp turn and go up that hill anymore. They'll be able to go right straight out across. So it's a win-win situation for all parties.
And State Highway actually helped us develop this concept.
John?
Well, no, I mean, if you want, obviously, our CFO is here today, and I know she's aware of this situation. So, I don't know, if you want to call on her, or you want to ask staff to take a look at this and come back with some suggestions, we can do that too. But if you have any thoughts, I mean, if you want.
I'd like to ask Michelle if she had thoughts right now.
Yeah, but you're here, so.
Consider funding.
Yeah, we can't, they won't be able to hear you back there.
Michelle Gordon, Chief Financial Officer. If the commission would like to consider funding all or even just a portion of this particular project, I would recommend that we use funding from the CIP fund, reserve balance at this point.
And that balance is approximately?
It's a little over 40 million right now, and we have about 21 million set aside for projects that are not designated.
Yeah, I that's sort of what I wanted to hear. I'm okay. I would be okay. I'd motion to approve it.
I'll second.
Up to
20,000.
Up to 520 is your motion?
Yes, up to 520,000.
Say I have to add, as a Boonesboro resident in the past and grew up there, and went in and out of that intersection for a number of years through high school, it has always been a troubled spot. So hats off to the mayor, council, and town manager for a lot of hard efforts here. So I think it's a good deal. We have a motion and a second on the floor.
Can we include the funding source?
Yeah.
Yes.
Including the funding source.
Okay. So all in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Now
you,
you gotta
gentlemen.
bring another plaque in next week, Howard.
Yes, sir, we can handle that.
Yeah, another plaque.
That is, so that is the funding part of it.
Right.
You know, and you recognize, and I will, because they're sitting back there, but, you know, Washington County Public Schools has been involved with this from day one.
Yes, sir.
The county wasn't involved with this from the beginning, really just got involved last fall. So there's a couple different roles. I mean, the county, obviously, the funding request that you just approved today. The second part of it is because, as you know, under Maryland law, if any property is conveyed from the Board of Education, it can't be conveyed directly to anybody else. It has to come to you through the county government. So that's the county's role in that particular part of it. So there's still some things that have to be worked on relating to the land needed for this project. So
That's correct.
so the funding, this board approved that funding, but, you know, I would just say to the town, and,
Right.
you know, that I think there has to be further discussions with Washington County Public Schools as to those land issues.
That's correct.
And the county's only involvement is, they would travel through us to somebody else, and then back through us.
John, would the land acceptance require a future vote? Is that something that we can give consensus on to, like, if they want to get started in the springtime, spring will be here before you know it?
Right.
To make sure that we don't delay them in any way with
I mean,
that.
once they work out those issues, I mean, there'd have to be a deed from Washington County, well, from the Board of Education to county government, and then the county government will convey it to the town or whoever that is. So it will be a future vote. We're not ready to do that right now, because I know there's further discussions that have to be.
Howard, are you confident you can make this happen, right?
Yes, sir. Yep, as long as we can get the land, that's the main thing. If we can, if the school board's willing to deed it back to you all, and you all deed it to the town of Boonesboro, then we'll deed the other property.
School board's being awful quiet back there, but we'll see what happens.
That's fine. We hope, it's gonna work out, great for all parties involved, I think, once we get it completed. I just, very thankful nobody's been hit by a vehicle. I know we had a fatality yesterday in Williamsport. Pedestrian was struck, and we're keeping our fingers crossed that we can get this done and get it in so none of these kids. And it's not just during school, it's after school too, with activities and all going on over to high school. And they're getting more and more students involved in extracurricular activities, and that is great, because that keeps them off the streets and out of trouble. So we hope everything can be worked out. I know Mr. Downey has to review things and make sure we do the proper way and legally and everything. But I think it's going to be a very good situation. Even the school principal stopped me during Veterans Day program and said, how's this road coming? We need to get that done. I said, well, we got to work through the proper channels and make sure we got everything, all the ducks in a row and everything's legal and everything. So once we get that done, hopefully we can have it done and ready this spring.
Yeah, and I'll just say, I think, all parties have been cooperative, all parties recognize, whether it's Washington County Public Schools, the county commission, the county, and the town, of course. So I just wanted to encourage you to maybe to reach out to the Board of Education and have those discussions so we can make sure that this project is ongoing and moving forward. Now that you have the funding, now they have the funding to do it.
And while I'm sitting here, after we had the meeting here in Urals, and the young man told us these different things and all that we had to relate to and all, it's new to me. So I have a real good friend that is governmental affairs with Governor Hogan, and that's Mark Widmeyer. And I sat down and talked to Mark, and he told me, he said, Howard, you didn't listen to me. You did it all wrong. and so I hope I didn't upset anybody by going to Mark, because it's all new to me, and I didn't understand. And I talked to him, and he got us guided in the right direction
Bring
with you
another
guys.
plaque in on your next visit.
Yes, sir.
Now you need
We
one
can do that.
You need one for the Board of Education too. Get that one. Get
A
that
plaque?
one. Yeah, a plaque. Get that
No
one.
problem with that either.
All right, thank you.
Howard, again, 51 years ago, as a senior at Boonesboro High School, that intersection was dangerous then, and I can only imagine what it's like, currently. So hats off to all the hard work and tenacity to try to move this forward.
Thank you.
Thank you,
And
guys.
then you all will give us a response sometime, John, about the piece of ground? Will you all notify, or do we have to have another meeting with, joint with?
That's why I was encouraging you to reach out to,
School board?
Again, our role was to, because of the law, the way the law is set up, the Board of Education can't convey that directly to the town.
Okay.
So that's our role, that's what would happen here. So, I think I would encourage you to reach out to your contacts at Washington County Public Schools.
Okay.
Have some further discussions about that, and then, if we need to be involved in those discussions, I'll be happy to be involved in those discussions, but
Okay.
that's why I just want you to encourage you to reach out to them and open those lines of communication again, so.
Okay, we can do that. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr.
Howard.
President?
Have a good day.
Thank you, Mayor.
Nothing for the mayor, but just to piggyback off of a comment by Randy, and Randy is absolutely right. We had some ambiguity, so we had to ask our CFO to come up and provide some insight as to where we're at. And I would ask that, I've talked to John already about this, but just a snapshot cheat sheet of where we're at on our funds and any carryover surplus that we had and what's available, just so we have a snapshot of where we're at financially. We haven't gotten a financial update, and I'd like to see that before we get into the budget season, just so we have some awareness of our options. So,
Commissioner Harvey talked to me about that this morning right before the meeting, so I said I would get with Michelle and we would talk about how best to do that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Hate to rush out on you, but we got some more meetings we got to go to.
Okay, next item is contract award, purchase order 1583, rubble landfill closure for the solid waste department. Brandy, good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Brandy Noggle, Buyer in the Purchasing Department.
Good morning. Dave Mason, Deputy Director, Solid Waste.
Morning, Dave.
Morning.
The first recommendation I have for you this morning is the contract award PUR 1583, the rubble landfill closure for the Solid Waste Department. Move to award the contract for the rubble landfill closure project to the responsive bidder, Green Ridge Contractors out of Hagerstown, Maryland, who submitted the lowest total sum bid in the amount of $1,496,485. This did include item numbers 1 through 10 and the contingent items C1 through C3. The project is for a 5-acre synthetic cap on cell number 1. The project includes site clearing, the synthetic cap, stormwater management, and the gas vents. The rubble landfill is located off Kemps Mill Road, north of Williamsport. The invitation to bid was advertised on the State of Maryland's eMaryland Marketplace Advantage site, the county's website, and in the local newspaper. 38 companies downloaded the document, 6 bids were received, and 9 firms were present at the pre-bid teleconference conference. Funds are available in Solid Waste Department's capital improvement plan.
And this is a required procedure, correct?
Yes, yes.
And are we running out of time on that? I think I read,
Yes, yeah, we have a limited amount of time to get it done, but the approval process is taking longer than expected, so we got a little bit of leeway there.
yeah,
Just a question for the public and me. Where do we accumulate those funds that pay for this that's already in our budget?
Well, when we set up the site, there's monies put away for closure costs throughout the life of the project. So being that this landfill was only open for 4 years, I'm not exactly sure what those funds are, but there are some funds
But
available.
in general, we plan ahead of
Yes.
time by putting money in reserve accounts to do this is what I'm
Yes.
getting at.
As part of the operation.
User fees.
Right.
For the project itself.
Correct.
We plan for the closure as best that we can.
That's my point. Thank you.
Motion to approve.
Second.
okay, we have a motion and a second to approve as submitted. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, 5-0. Next item is contract renewal, PUR 1403, landfill inspection services requirements contract. Brandy and Dave.
The next recommendation is the contract renewal for PUR 1403 landfill inspection services, and this is a requirements contract. Motion to renew the contract with BAI Group LLC out of State College, Pennsylvania for the period of 1 year commencing March 13, 2023. This is the 4th and final 1-year renewal. The contract terms, conditions will remain the same as they currently are, with the exception of the 5.6% increase for construction, inspection, and engineering services. And this is based on a letter that BAI submitted November 21st, 2022. You'll see how the rates have changed over the years. And based on their letter, when they ask for an increase in the rate, they do go through the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. And on an average, this is what has been asked. We ranged from 2.4%, with this year being the highest at 5.6%. The services under this contract consist of providing inspection services for landfill-related construction projects located throughout the county. This is a requirements contract, therefore we don't guarantee a minimum or a maximum on this. And there are funds budgeted in the department's operating budget for this service.
Comments, questions, motion? Motion, we need a second.
Second.
Motion is second on the floor to approve as submitted. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gentlemen, the next item on our agenda, PUR 1586, I've been notified has been pulled this morning, and I assume will be submitted at a later time. So with that said, we'll move into intergovernmental cooperative purchase, INTG 22-0103, personal protective equipment, PPE, for Division of Emergency Services. Rick Curry, Eric Jacobs, welcome, gentlemen. Good morning.
Good morning, Rick Curry, Director of Purchasing. Eric Jacobs, Operations Manager, Emergency Services. Subject for you is intergovernmental cooperative purchase, INTG 22-0103, personal protective equipment for Division Emergency Services. The recommended motion moved to authorize a resolution for the approval of purchase of personal protective equipment, which consists of coats for Division Emergency Services from Municipal Emergency Service of Rockville, Maryland, at a contracted unit price totaling $177,286.89, based on a contract awarded by Fairfax County. You see the solicitation number, and you see the breakdown of the coats. There's various different styles of coats. That's why the prices are different. Code of Public Laws does allow for this board to procure goods and services under contract entered by another jurisdiction, even though we weren't part of the original contract. The benefit of that would be that we didn't have to prepare a solicitation, do the evaluation. This is an ongoing program that the division has started a couple years back. There are funding. We have concurrence from the division director. That concludes my recommendation for INTG 22-0103.
Discussion? Questions? Motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion is second to approve as submitted. All in favor by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Thank you, 5-0. Next item is intergovernmental cooperative purchase, INTG 22-0104, one new 2024 Ford F-650 truck. Rick Curry, Director, and Mark Bradshaw.
Again, Rick Curry, Director of Purchasing.
Mark Bradshaw, Director of Environmental Management.
Before you is intergovernmental cooperative purchase, INTG-22-0104, which is a new 2024 Ford F-650 truck. The recommendation is to authorize a resolution for the Department of Water Quality to purchase one new 2024 F-650 regular cab truck with a 11-foot dump body, which totals $95,773, and to utilize another jurisdiction contract was awarded by Sourcewell Contract to 72 Hour LLC, doing business as National Auto Fleet Group of Watsonville, California. Code of Public Law does allow for this board to procure goods and services under contract entered into by another jurisdiction, even though we were not part of that contract. And the cost savings is that we don't have to do a solicitation, do an evaluation, and funds are budgeted in the department's budget for this truck. This truck is replaced, if you remember, we came in like 2 weeks ago to council in order for a truck that was canceled by the manufacturer. If the board is not aware, we'll be probably coming in for some time to come because trucks and vehicles are getting hard to come by. But we will deal with that as we need to and procure services and service for items. And that concludes my recommendation for INTG 22-0104.
Rick, is that why the model year is so many, is it 2024? It's going to take a while?
Yes.
To get this?
And we've been submitting orders and we've been getting notification from manufacturers that those orders have been canceled. So we've been trying to find other sources. At some point, we'll have to have private discussion with the administrator to do another route of how we do business as far as getting trucks, vehicles. Everyone's in the same boat. The manufacturers, I think, have seen a way to kind of control their inventory because they'll take and accept orders and they only produce what they wanted to produce. They're not even allowed dealers to even have additional vehicles on the lot. At one point in time, we could go to a dealer and see if they had additional vehicles that they didn't sell. That's not the case today.
Question in general. Vehicle replacement program. Do you have a list of vehicles that in the future are coming closer near?
We work off of that principle when you talk about our guidelines, but the problem is that we try to find that window that's open now. They call it a window of opportunity. Just recently we submitted, I think, like 13 vehicles, as we normally do with purchase orders. A week later, we got an email back from the vendor stating that the orders weren't accepted because the purchase orders weren't signed. So it's just, in my opinion, it's just one way of trying to control what's being produced. We'll work through that, but it's not easy for departments to try to replace their vehicles and find them as we really used to do in the past.
That was the point. Thank you for explaining that.
So this is $95,773?
Yes, sir.
Okay, a new vehicle. I think Jeff had a good question about how we program for that and anticipate, because these are very expensive vehicles across the fleet. What are the alternatives you're actually looking at besides purchasing brand new? I drive a 1992 Jeep as my primary vehicle, so I'm just curious.
My personal opinion, I would kind of caution someone of a used vehicle because of the fact that you really don't know that much history about it. I mean, I can see you like on websites and whatnot in some places we go to, they'll paint the vehicle, paint them all up, make them look real pretty and nice, but what's in the inside of that engine is what I'm concerned with in the powertrain. We have a policy where we only buy white vehicles. We might have to look at substituting that to where we might buy red vehicles, black vehicles. We might have to buy whatever we can find.
Rick, at one time, white vehicles, that was like for an insurance, usually the insurance is cheaper because it's, I guess the vehicle's a little more visible.
And also, the manufacturer is cheaper because of color. White's the cheapest color you can buy, and that's one of the reasons why we went with that. Plus, it made everything uniform. But, you know, thinking about it, you know, we kind of discouraged from off-the-lot purchases because we really don't have really much control, because a lot of the off-lot purchases, they're not solicited through a competitive bid cycle. It's where a jurisdiction will say, I will issue you a contract for vehicles on your lot. Anyone within our jurisdiction can come to your lot and purchase those. To me, in our policy way it sets it, it has to be a competitive process. It cannot be just a process where someone issued a contract. That's something else we might have to look at down the road. So, you know, we're looking at and we're talking with other jurisdictions and trying to figure out how to help the departments to get what they need.
Yeah, so, I mean, you know, obviously through the years, I mean, obviously, and some of it just came out this morning about how we got to this point.
Yes.
You know, the process has worked very well, I believe.
It has.
I just say a long time, but.
Long time.
You know, for a long time, and even and as you mentioned, about buying white vehicles, you know, the county has all white vehicles, but we did that for a reason, because, you know, it was like I said, it's more visible from an insurance perspective, and it's cheap, and it was cheaper. But now that the rules and the process has changed, we are looking at, you know, what kind of changes can we make to do that? So the process has worked for a while, but we are looking at that.
So what I'm hearing is that you may have some ideas about how we might make some changes to adapt to the current market and the supply side issues here.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm looking forward to hearing more about that.
We'll come back and talk to you about that when we have some more specifics on those ideas about how we can address that moving forward.
And with the availability right now, it's sad but true. It's difficult to do any bargaining because it takes you a year and a half to get a truck anyway.
You know, we submitted orders for trucks. There's some trucks been on order for as much as a year and a half, and we get notification that they've been kicked out of the production.
But that won't last forever, hopefully, so we can move forward with new ideas, I guess.
Yes. We'll find some way to get what we need.
And as you may, well, actually, it may have been before the new board came on. We have come and asked for some minor changes to the process to allow us to, I think it was the sheriff's department and I think some other departments.
It was like 5 departments where we did not go through the normal process of getting approval and then make the purchase. We had approval prior to, so we could place the orders, so we could get that window of opportunity that was open.
Yeah, because the window was too short for us to do that. So, so this board has already taken some action to try to address that, but.
We'll keep you abreast.
Motion?
Second.
Second. Motion is second on the floor to approve as submitted. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same
Thank you.
sign. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. 5-0. Next item is Walnut Hill Farm LLC Rural Legacy Program easement. Chris Boggs. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Commissioners. Welcome back, John. Commissioner Harvey, welcome aboard. So this is the Walnut Hill Farm LLC Rural Legacy Easement Project. It's located on Routson Road, on the east side of Routson Road in Boone. And it'll serve to preserve a valuable ag, scenic, environmental, and historic property in our county. It contains both agricultural land and some woodland. And also the Antietam Creek borders the eastern property boundary of the property. It's listed on the Maryland Inventory of Historic Places and is significant for its architecture. And we'll be extinguishing 7 development rights and adding to a 1,000+ acre block of rural legacy and other permanent preserved properties in that area. Since 1998, Washington County has been awarded over $27 million to purchase rural legacy easements in the county. And this encompasses over 8,400 acres of land in and around the Battlefield area. It's kind of a sister program to the Maryland Agricultural Land Preservation Program that's run through MDA, except this is funded by DNR and concentrates more on historic and environmental qualities, as well as that agricultural quality of the properties. For this easement, we'll use a portion of our grant for the FY23 cycle. that was $1.55 million. All easement applications were previously ranked through our easement ranking formula for each cycle. So these funds are 100% state dollars, mainly from DNR open space funds. Additionally, the county receives a 3% of the easement value for administrative costs and a 1.5% of the easement value for compliance and monitoring costs that we would do after the easement's in place. The state provides us funding for all settlement costs and incidental costs, for instance, if a survey is required or settlement fees, things like that. Both the State Rural Legacy Board and the DNR have approved and support our program, and we'll get the final funding allocation after the State Board of Public Works approves the project. Alternatives, if the county rejects these funds, the funds will just be distributed to other counties in the state. So the recommended motion would be to approve the Walnut Hill Farm LLC Rural Legacy Easement Project in the amount of $420,000 over 114.75 easement acres. Any questions?
Motion to approve.
You had a question, Jeff?
Second, then I'll have a question.
I'll second so you can question.
Thank you. There's an appraisal done on these properties, right?
These are actually, Rural Legacy is done through an easement valuation formula.
So there's a process to get to that
Yes,
price.
yes, it's a formula that's adjusted periodically to kind of make it competitive with our Maryland Ag Land Preservation Program, which that program does use appraisals, but Rural Legacy uses a formula.
But there's a formula.
Yep.
It's just not arbitrary.
Correct.
Yeah.
Just a question, in your ranking for prioritization,
Yes.
how many other properties were you looking at in this process of ranking for determining that it would be this property?
Well, my running list is a little over 50 properties long,
Okay,
or 50
good.
applicants long.
And then the second question is, what can we do to try to secure more money from this program?
Well, there is, I actually have a meeting next week with a land trust group that I'm a part of, and we're going to talk about working on leveraging funding for Rural Legacy through other land trust possibilities, other funding sources. But over the years, in fact, right now, it's much better than it has been in the past as far as funding for our easement programs is concerned. But yeah, that's the same question that you hear everywhere you go, every county you go to in the state is.
So how much money do you actually anticipate being able to allocate in Washington County this year through this program?
Through this program, I'll be able to use the entire 1.55 million.
Okay, that's how much we have.
That's how much we have right now, and I'll be coming to the commissioners at the end of this month to request approval for the following year, FY24's application for Rural Legacy. Of course, I always ask for significantly more than we usually get, but that's, kind of how the process works.
But that's not the total amount of money that we've spent on ag preservation.
No. Well, we also have several other programs that we work with. Just this program is the 1.55.
And I appreciate the tolerance of my more senior members for my questions because I'm new and I'm just learning some of these issues, so appreciate that.
You're on Chris's committee now, so.
Yep.
Okay,
Any other questions?
Ready to vote?
we have a motion and a second. Okay, we're good with that. All in favor by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Thank you. 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Next item is joint sewer service area agreement. Mark Bradshaw.
Morning, Mark Bradshaw, Director of Environmental Management. I'm here today to make a request that the county commissioners submit a request to the city of Hagerstown to amend paragraph 7 of the joint sewer service area agreement to permit the use of deduct meters. And the second request is to allow the property located at 17601 Broad Fording Road also to be added to Area B, which is the red hashed area shown there on your exhibit, to be included in the agreement. A deduct meter is utilized in industrial and commercial businesses to measure the amount of water that is utilized or consumed during the normal operations that isn't discharged into the domestic sewer. The deduct meter reading is then subtracted from the water meter reading to calculate the amount of the sewer being generated and thus billed accordingly. For businesses within the county that have installed deduct meters, they have seen a substantial savings from the reduced user fees and from not having to purchase additional allocation. The second request, the property located at 17601 Broad Fording Road is in the process of being annexed into the city of Hagerstown. The sewage from this area is currently being treated by the county's Conococheague wastewater treatment plant per the JSA. The Conococheague wastewater plant has adequate capacity to accept the additional sewage flow until the city redirects the flow back to their treatment plant in the very near future.
I have a question. When that flow is redirected back to the city, is there a loss of revenue for us?
We will lose some revenue, but we are also getting ready to start the capacity management project in the north end to redirect all the flow from Morgansville area and everything north of Showwater to the county. So we will get that revenue, but we will lose the wholesale revenue.
Would self out or hopefully?
Oh, no, we come out on the.
Very good,
yeah,
that's good.
we come out on the positive end.
Pretty good.
Okay, any other questions, motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I think they're getting tired.
We want to give our senior member the opportunity to participate. First and a second, yeah.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Thanks.
One minor question. Who do you want to sign the letter? You want staff to sign it, or do you want to sign it, President Barr?
Doesn't matter. What's,
Legal.
we'll
figure it out.
like I say, what we
Figure it out?
prefer.
Give me a call this afternoon.
Okay. Thank you.
Next item is FY23 MIMS cardiac device grant approval to submit application and accept awarded funding. David Chisholm, Deputy Director of Operations, and Nicole Phelps, Grant Manager. Good morning.
Good morning.
Nicole Phillips, Grant Manager, Office of Grant Management.
Dave Chisholm, Deputy Director of Emergency Services.
And we are here today for a motion to accept the awarded funding from the FY23 Cardiac Device Grant through MIMS in the amount of $35,827. MIMS makes available to the EMS community the opportunities for funding for equipment, training, and EMS-related programs. The Division of Emergency Services will use this grant funding to purchase 2 cardiac monitors. This will provide $35,827 for the Division of Emergency Services, and the match of $35,827 associated with this grant will be covered by the Emergency Services operating FY23 budget.
This is the same device that was used on the football player, correct?
Yes, sir.
The defibrillator, correct?
It is.
And where will these two be used?
One will be in a staff vehicle that our quality assurance officer uses, and the other will be a spare, so that when the devices do break, as any electronic device does, before we can get service people in to fix it and they come to us, we're able to get a spare out to keep the service delivery intact.
So are these AEDs?
These are much more than AEDs. These are LifePak monitor defibrillators that perform 12 leads used by paramedics. AEDs can be used by paramedics, but are generally used by EMTs.
Okay. So the question I have may not pertain to this, but defibrillators, like what was used in the football game, other places where I've worked, they've had those available with people trained in the offices. So
Yes,
a
sir.
building like this would have one available. Do we have those available here?
You do.
Have one in the hallway?
You have one out in the hallway.
Yeah,
Okay,
just
good.
one.
I just wanted to ask that. Thank
There's
you.
quite a number of public access defibrillators throughout Washington County.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Okay.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve as submitted. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Next item, discussion of commissioner representation assignments on Washington County boards and commissions. Over to Krista.
Commissioners, this is a discussion carried over from December 13th. We've got various boards and commissions that have not yet received assignment. On the handout that I gave you this morning, in your binder separately, if you look at page 2, it shows notes of general discussion that was held on December 13th. And who said they may be interested in what board, but we still have the list of vacancies that we need to fill.
Couple.
Yes, on this listing, Commissioner Barr has taken the Housing Authority and the Tri-County Council Western Maryland Revolving Loan Fund.
Alternate.
Alternate, yes.
The Aging Council was good for me.
I'm sorry.
I will sign up for the Aging Council if you need someone for that.
Commissioner Harvey, I also have you down from the last discussion, you mentioned you possibly could be available for the Tri-County.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and then I have Commissioner Wagner said he may take the Disabilities Advisory Committee and the Women's Commission.
And the Women's Commission would be good for Randy because for babysitting purposes, you know, when Beth goes, I can't be going too, so, because she's president of the Women's Commission.
I'll take the Women's Commission back. And I'm thinking about Eastern Panhandle Metropolitan Planning Organization. I'll make that decision later.
The alternate?
Alternate, yeah.
Okay.
You can assign a representative.
Yeah, I know. That's why I got to think about this a little bit, but I have an interest there.
Lead control. It's only,
That's a burdensome one.
yeah.
Randy, what about the Disability Advisory?
I don't have it in my schedule. I looked at it. It's just not going to work. No.
Just add weed control to mine.
If we could get the Diversity and Inclusion Committee to shift their meeting time from Mondays, the reason I suggest that, and I don't know if we can have some dialogue with them, but the issue there is the town councils generally all meet on that second Monday of each month, and I know a lot of commissioners do like to visit and hear what's going on at the town councils, and that's a direct conflict, and it might be more. There might be more of an opportunity if they were able to shift their meeting time.
I can reach out to them and update the commissioners.
What do we have left?
We have the Diversity and Inclusion, we have the Disability Advisory.
I will say the Disability Advisory is mostly Zoom. Unless they're changing it, it's always been Zoom.
So is, at this point, so is the Diversity. We're doing that as well. Mental Health Authority.
So there's,
And Commissioner Kiefer, are you still okay with the Western Maryland Consortium alternate?
Yes.
And that would be all then.
so there's only 3 left?
1, 2, 3.
Continue to think about those 3. Everyone's pleasure.
The ones that meet on Wednesday are difficult for me because that's when most of my outside business opportunities are, so.
I think we got it down to fight and wait now. We address it, look at it, think about it, see how it works out what we already have.
Okay. Any other thoughts or comments? There's just 3 left, and we'll keep them under our radar screen. So with that said, Looking for a motion to go into the closed session as for the reasons stated.
Motion to go in closed session.
Seconded.
Okay, motion second to go into closed session. All in favor by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Thank you, 5-0. And let's take a 5-minute recess.
Thank you.